welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. Of course, affordable housing is at such a critical point, both in crisis for our Nevadans in need, but also the opportunities going ahead and really transforming what affordable housing looks like for our future. So really excited for the topic today and grateful for all our participants. I'm Christine Hess, the Executive Director for the Nevada Housing Coalition. And I'm going to be kicking it over to my board chair. But in the meantime, just want to let you know that we will be having questions and answers. And for those of you who may be also looking for affordable housing, we've added Betsy Fadali towards the end of today's discussion, and she'll show you where you can find all information about the units that have income restrictions on them, and including these units. So we did add an additional guest speaker. Thank you, Betsy. But with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce my board chair to kick us off this morning. Bill Brewer is the Executive Director for the Nevada Rural Housing Authority and a founding member of the coalition. So thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Christine. Want to welcome everyone to our Lunch and Learn series today. We're grateful to have you with us and thankful for your time. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce the governor of our great state this afternoon. Governor Sisolak has done more for housing than any governor in modern history. His first term and his first address to the legislature, he instituted the idea of the Nevada Affordable Housing Tax Credit. This year, he has led the charge to allocate $300 million of our private activity bond cap to housing, and of course his Home Means Nevada initiative with $500 million of ARPA funds also to housing. We're so grateful, Governor, for your support. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bill. Good afternoon. Just returned afternoon. I appreciate that very kind introduction, and thanks for having me today. I also want to thank Christine Hess for the kind introduction to being such a great advocate and ally in our work on the housing crisis. I'll be brief. I'm at the Harry Reid International Airport waiting to catch a flight to go up to Reno and then to Carson City, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to join you all briefly today to talk about the affordable housing crisis in the Silver State and all we're doing to make progress for Nevadans. Mostly, I'm here to express my gratitude to you all. We could not have launched the Home Means Nevada Affordable Housing Initiative without all of you. It takes a lot of people. I know Steve Aichroth from the Housing Division is on the call and they'll walk you through the Home Means Nevada initiative in more depth with you in just a few minutes. In some of our plans, if some of our plans sound familiar, please know that's by design. It was all of your work, your suggestions, and your feedback that truly informed our work at the state level. It molded what we needed to do. And I'm grateful for your thoughtful comments and expertise and input on these areas. When we launched the Home Means Nevada initiative 2 weeks ago, I talked about how this crisis could not be solved alone. I mean that. It will take each and every one of us focusing on our efforts and working collaboratively to solve this problem. And it's going to take time. That's why we're here today. And that's why we're committed to hear your feedback and your solutions on this crisis. We know that having safe and affordable housing is critical and has impacts that ripples beyond a roof over your head. At last week's Healthcare Provider Summit, we had a lively breakout session called Housing is Healthcare. With housing, we can locate, support, and provide services Nevadans need to be successful. Housing is a foundation from which we can support food insecurity, employment, and so many other necessities that people have. Finally, before I go, I want to remind you that we are now accepting pre-applications at nevadarecovers.com. If you've got a shovel-ready project and want to partner with the state, please go fill out an application. We want to be your partner. As of earlier this week, we had just over 20 applicants. My team tells me that's not bad, but we can do better than that. I'd like to have double that amount that are available that we can work with our private sector partners to get sticks in the ground and get units built. Thank you once again for having me. I'm sorry I've got to go. I don't have much time. I hope to see you all again very soon. Thank you and have a great conference.
Thank you so much, Governor. It really is a joy to have you with us, and we really do appreciate all of your support for housing. Thank you so much, and safe travels.
Thank you.
The governor mentioned our pre-application process is open right now, and we are grateful to have Steve Aichroth and Michael Holliday from the Nevada Housing Division with us to tell us more about that. Beyond that, we're very grateful to have Steve and Michael supporting us through NHC. With these guys at the helm, we're in good hands. So thank you both, and we'll turn it over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate the kind words. Thanks to the Nevada Housing Coalition for putting this together. Also like to thank the governor. I think he's left now, but I know this is recorded, but through his leadership and the establishment of the Home Means Nevada initiative, we look to do great things. Can't forget that the funding for this has been legislatively approved. So I'd like to thank the state legislatures at the last IFC meeting for putting their trust in the housing division and trying to get a lot of these projects and solve a very, very deep problem in the Silver State. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Home Means Nevada initiative, I'll spend a little bit of time discussing that and exactly what it is first before diving in and kind of going through the process. So the Home Means Nevada initiative was a $500 million initiative established by the governor, legislatively approved, as I mentioned, and it really followed the framework of the Nevada Housing Coalition. When the state and local fiscal relief recovery funds were provided through the American Rescue Plan, the state treasurer and the governor's office conducted hundreds of meetings all over the state. And one of the things that they heard dramatically was the need for more affordable housing. And so the coalition, through their task force and their membership, submitted a proposal that I believe was $500 million. It was a little bit different, but almost blueprinted exactly the same, with 4 different categories established for this $500 million. And so I'm going to run through those categories real quick, and then we'll get through to the process for applying for these funds. So the first $500 million category is for affordable housing multifamily development. That's a $300 million, so 60% of the funds will go to affordable housing multifamily development, with 20% of those funds dedicated to below 30% area median income, and another 20% of the funds dedicated for permanent supportive housing. So we think that this is the area of greatest need in the state. We know that we have to provide more funding and more available apartments and more developments for those who are at the bottom rung of the economic ladder or have intellectual disabilities and things of that nature. So that's our biggest bucket, if you will. The second is affordable housing preservation. This is a term that basically means that we're going to preserve our existing affordable housing. And when we build affordable housing, we want to make sure that we're adding to the inventory. There can be a drain on that inventory also. And so what we're trying to do with this, and it's 130 million of the 500 million, is to kind of cordon off that drain a little bit and make these properties extend their affordability period for an additional 30 years. And this is a great tool, the state and local fiscal recovery funds, for doing this. The third category is for homeownership opportunities and rehabilitation. That is 30 million. And basically that will be done through 2 areas of attack, if you will. One is for homeownership opportunities, and working diligently to create a down payment assistance program for those who might be eligible to get in and purchase a home. And then the second is allowing folks to age in place, elderly or again, disabled, building ramps, making remediations to their homes so that they can live independently. The fourth bucket is for land acquisition for future affordable development. Basically this is, I don't want to call it exactly land banking, but it's basically to enable us to continue this fund and potentially have these funds available a little bit longer by acquiring developable land to create affordable housing. So those are the four strategies that were created through this process. So how do you get your hands on the ability to build here? And that is done through NevadaRecovers.com. That is the portal, the application portal. In there, you will find the three things that are pretty critical. Number one is the pre-application guidance, and I'm going to go through that a little bit. A conflict of interest form, which will be required upon your submission with the pre-application process. And then there's some FAQs. So hopefully through this seminar, you'll be able to understand how to access the pre-application process. And I can't emphasize this enough. We need you to apply. You heard the governor mention, we need to make a difference and we really need you to apply. So there's going to be, I know there'll be a question and answer session at the end of this. I don't know that we are going to have all the answers that everyone is looking for as we go through this. But we want you to make, all of you to make your best efforts to apply to the best of your abilities, providing clear answers, again, to the best of your abilities. But if you don't step up to the plate and if you don't apply, you're not going to be eligible for this funding. So this pre-application period is available until May 15th at 5 p.m., at which point the portal will be shut off and the applications that we have in are the applications that we will review. And I should rephrase this and say the pre-applications, because there will be, once the pre-applications are vetted, determined eligibility and scored, then we will be reaching out to those who have risen to the next step for full applications, and we are working on developing that full application process literally as we speak. It's been a little busy around here. So the pre-application period form is available at NevadaRecovers.com. You click on that, you click on Home Means Nevada, and there's a sentence or a paragraph right at the beginning that talks about pre-application guidance. You can click on that and you can go through. There's a better explanation of what I just provided regarding the four categories, the application instructions, the eligible uses, the due dates. I want to talk a little bit about the pre-application questions, and then I'll turn it over to Michael so that he can emphasize some of the information. There's 15 pre-application questions. Some of them are just basically checks. We do need you to identify, to the best of your ability, which of the categories you're applying for. That's pretty important to us. But there's 8 questions that effectively we need some color so we can evaluate the applications that you're providing. And I'm going to walk through those very quickly. One is to identify the community needs and barriers that your project is going to address. Another is to describe the objectives and intended outcomes of the project. The others are explain how the services will assist in the community's overall recovery, explain how many individuals, units, or households will be impacted by your project, the timeline of your project, the estimated annual cost of the project, along with and detailing current and potential funding sources, including the funding that you're applying for, and if your project is going to extend past 2024 and 2026, how it will be sustained. That's really important. We need you to identify your community or organization's commitment to inclusionary and diversity practices, and a brief history of your organization's use of federal funding or other sources for the development of affordable housing. So those are the ones that are what I just mentioned will be scored in the pre-application process. Once we are able to score those and determine eligibility, we will be reaching out to you to talk to you about your project and potentially an application process. And with that, I'm going to take a pause and let Michael talk about what he's seen in some of the applications so far.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone. I get to do the fun part to give you kind of an overview of what the applications look like so far, because I nerd out a couple of times a day and pull it down to see what's in the portfolio so far. So as Governor Sisolak mentioned, we currently have 21 applications, total requests of just over $55 million. Geographically, the breakdown, 9 of the projects are in Clark County, 2 cover Clark County and rural Nevada, 2 are statewide, and 8 are in Washoe County. To give you an idea of the categories that they cover, 4 are new construction multifamily only, 1 is home ownership only, 6 selected all 4 categories, and 9 were a combination of various categories, including land and preservation of multifamily housing. To Administrator Aichroth's point, the 2 things that I've seen missing on a couple of the pre-applications that could affect scoring, so that's why it's important to make sure you do fill it out as best you can. We understand there'll be a lot of estimates and best guesses and stuff, but we do need to have complete pre-applications. At least 1 category should be selected so we know which competitive bucket funding you're applying to. So that'll help us when we start to rank the projects. And the second is we do need some kind of estimate of cost. There are a couple of pre-applications that don't have any cost provided. And I think when it comes to scoring, that's going to make it difficult for the committee or panel to score them if there's no cost in there to compare it to relatively similar or even unique projects. With that, I could answer any more questions you have, but at this point, as Steve mentioned, we're pretty early in the process. Just wanted to give everyone an overview of what we're seeing so far. Good job. Keep it up. We need more applications. 55 million is a big number, but there's a lot left in that bucket, in all of the buckets, actually. So be good to see more applications come in. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Michael. And to go a little bit more in depth with some of the things that Michael has referred to, a lot of folks have reached out to the division with questions, and I'm sure we're going to hear some here. And, you know, regarding can I apply in multiple buckets? Because I've got a project that might do some rehab and some new construction. Really just take your best assessment and put it that way as to where it should lie. We've also had some questions, and I guess I'll phrase it this way: the pre-application process. First of all, I need to give a shout out to Clark County because we were able to use their process as a template, and we really tried to make it, although housing specific, so it linked well with what they had provided also. And I know Clark County will be doing another round of funding. Well, I shouldn't say I know. I believe Clark County will be doing another round of funding for affordable housing. And hopefully we'll have some consistency there, because if you're going to apply for their funds, hopefully some of the answers that you've provided in our application will work too. And that brings me to another point that I wanted to bring up. on the pre-application process, we indicate that we will take, if you submitted a project through the community recovery grant, which was a previous submission for ARPA funds from the state, we will accept those. They are going to be incredibly difficult to score. So we will accept those, but we're probably going to circle back to you and say, okay, we need those 8 questions answered that we talked about. So I know we got some questions on that, but we will be looking specifically through those ones that are housing related through the community recovery grant, and then trying to place them in the correct process that we have here. But please know that we are going to have to reach back out to you probably to get a little bit more information. And I think I know our time is a little early, so I guess we can go ahead and open it up to questions, Christine, if you'd like to do that a little bit early.
Oh yeah, I think that's awesome, because of course I have questions. I always have questions, Steve, but we did have some questions. I'll start with this first one because that's a good overview question. As people are thinking about submitting in the pre-application, what is the timeline that they need to have in mind for spending the funds?
Yeah, great question. We have to abide by Treasury's final rule. And you can access Treasury's final rule through treasury.gov, state and local fiscal recovery funds. It's published there. I don't know if the coalition has it on their website, but it is very accessible. Just pull it up on Google and it'll go there. And basically, it does have a timeline. So there's a couple of timelines. Number one is that the incidence of occurrence has to be between March of 2021 and December of 2024, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the timeline that we're addressing here. And that might sound weird. How does that tie in with affordable housing? I think folks need to understand that these fiscal recovery funds can be used for a broad range of uses. And so that's what they're trying to identify there. Affordable housing, we're all, anybody on this call is very, very familiar that this has been a process and it's been an ongoing issue in Nevada for decades, literally. And so this does fit into that time frame. The bigger number or date that we have to be concerned with is we have to have all this money obligated by December of 2024 and fully expended December of 2026. So this was part of the reason we needed to get this out. The pre-application periods we were developing really followed right after IFC approval and right after the governor's announcement, and giving everybody a month to apply for the funds through the pre-application process. We felt that would give everybody enough time, and then us enough time to evaluate, come back and do the full applications, do the awards, and have these funds obligated by 2024. And granted, for some of the projects that are going to be proposed, the timeline's not that big of an issue, but for new construction, for anybody who's involved in new construction, we already know that time is beginning to get tight. And so that's why we had to move quickly.
Well, ask and we shall receive. There's a ton of questions, which to me translates into a ton of pre-applications coming your way.
Well, that would be great to see.
So I'm going to try and start here. I know I saw, Michael, you answered this one. Is the purchase of an existing multifamily or hotel property to rehab for affordable housing going to have to appraise? Do you want to just answer that out loud, Michael?
Yeah, you bet. Appraisal is certainly going to be the part of something we're going to look at for any kind of preservation, purchase, or new construction property. But I would say in the case of ARPA funds, that might not be the only. There could be overriding factors that could help to overcome a valuation issue. So I would say do not let that hold you up from submitting a pre-application for sure.
Great. And that kind of comes to another question we had, which was, what is your definition of shovel ready? And would you say that the same answer, don't let that hold you up, getting in the weeds about whether your project is shovel ready?
I think the safe harbor there answer is yes. Don't let it hold you up, except remember that timeline that Steve just mentioned. So basically, pretty much all the costs have to be incurred before December 31st of 2024. So you kind of can almost work backwards from that date to that's what we're going to look at. Can a project that applies and be awarded actually incur most of its expenses before that deadline? Because otherwise the funds are not applicable.
Excellent. And I did also want to get to someone used the Q&A. I have been capturing as best I can the chat questions, but in the Q&A, will there be any money going towards specifically supportive housing for people with chronic mental illness?
So we know that there will be specific funding for supportive housing. 20% of the 300 million will have to go to supportive housing. We have not delved into, for lack of a better word, the subcategories of supportive housing. So would that be an eligible use? Potentially, an evaluation of the project. I do want to be clear on one thing. That does not mean that every project submitted has to have 20% supportive housing or 20% ELI. They just, when the dust all settles on this, we need to make sure that we've provided 20% of the funding towards supportive housing in that particular category.
Yeah, and ELI, of course, is below 30% of area median income, households below 30% of area median income. And that, Steve, that kind of leads into another question that was asked in the chat. And so these applications are coming. Can you provide additional insight on how points will be awarded to responses provided on the pre-application form?
So, it's just going to be on completeness and the answer to those questions. A little bit subjective. I, don't dispute that. But effectively, we've got 8 questions. They're worth 5 points apiece for a total of 40 points, and you need to score 30 points to move on to the next step and be serving eligible populations and things of that ilk. So, there's a lot that we can't control, I guess is the best way to phrase this as far as eligibility, because it all circles back to the final rule. And please know that the division, in coordination with the governor's office and the governor's finance office, that's how eligibility is going to be determined. So it's not a cut and dry thing where, oh, they're doing it in Indiana, why can't we do it here? We're Nevada. We have to be able to hold up and stand forth once, if there's any type of inspector general or auditing or any of those purposes come through. We need to make sure that everybody is very comfortable that it's an eligible project. So again, to circle back to the question, answer those as completely and as forthright as possible. And that's how we're going to score them.
Awesome. And Michael is hard at work in the chat. Thank you so much, Michael. You're jumping our questions. So hopefully everybody is accessing the chat. But I do want to know, we have a lot of developers on this call, because I can tell, and I kind of put some technical questions to the side here that I want to start with, Steve, if that's okay with you and Michael. And I also want to let the developers know that the coalition is actually engaging with Glenn Graff of Applegate, Thorne Thompson, exactly around some of the chat questions you see around just really understanding and getting some good legal opinion, tax opinion on making sure that we're doing everything we can to support our state to deploy these funds well, maximize the leverage, and have good project eligibility, of course, solid project eligibility. So I'm just going to run through a few questions. One is actually a little broader, Steve. I don't think, at least to my knowledge, there's been any geographic allocation of funds, correct?
No, there has not. That did not come through a requirement either through federally or state. However, I know we are going to take a look at the population dispersion across the state and use that as a guideline. So, you know, I think 73% of the population of the state of Nevada, if I remember current from the latest demographer report, resided in Clark County. Does that mean that Clark County is going to get specifically exactly 73% of the projects? Probably not, but will it get close to it? Probably. And we just need to see exactly where this, you know, how the buckets come through and what's eligible and that sort of thing.
Okay, here's another one that's kind of loaded because I know we might not necessarily have an answer, and I love it because it's really simple. Is there matching funds requirement?
So, in some cases to be determined, we're still working through that process. I will say that one of the questions that we talk about is, hang on, let me pull it up here. The detailing of all current and potential funding sources. One of the things that I kind of want to, that we're going to probably evaluate things on is where is this other funding coming from? We may be funding projects in their entirety in full. We don't know that yet. But we're also going to require on projects, okay, what's the debt service? So what other layer of funding have you come in with or acquired? And we will be talking and have been talking all along with local jurisdictions, not only in regards to their potential layering of fiscal recovery funds, which is allowed in this process. So, you know, possibly if you need, if a project needs, you know, $5 million as an example in fiscal recovery funds, maybe 4 is coming from the state and 1 is coming from a local jurisdiction. We don't know. We got to look at that. But we'll be working with the local jurisdictions to make sure that they're comfortable with the projects and it's serving their needs also, because that's another identifier that we'll be scoring on. So layering of funds, availability of other funds, skin in the game, that's all going to factor into this decision-making process.
Excellent. And I know you just answered another question about percentage of ARPA funds. So as everybody heard relative to the match there, Steve kind of explained that. Again, another short and quick question that feels like it should have an easy answer. Are these funds taxable? For-profit, non-profit, obviously not non-profit, but for-profit developers.
I mean, it's not as easy a question, I think, as it depends on how it's being used and what it's coupled with. But Michael, I'll defer to you. I mean, we know it's going to reduce some eligible basis in some projects.
So I put the chicken answer in the chat and said I'm not a tax attorney.
Yeah.
So the answer is it depends, and I would recommend you discuss it with a tax attorney. But it honestly does depend, because I think it depends on the structure. It depends on the recipient. There are a lot of factors as far as that taxable piece.
Awesome. And you know, I saw Kenneth, you asked a question about known or potential IRS or eligible basis issues with using ARPA funds and LIHTC funded new development projects. It's a challenge, which is some of the work that we're going through now. There is currently legislation that's been introduced in Congress, the Lifeline Act, that would allow for long-term loans with ARPA funds specifically. Otherwise, final rule has made it tricky, which is why you're hearing some of these questions today and why some of the answers are still a little difficult. I will say Nevada is out front. Awesome. Thank you, division. Thank you, governor, treasurer, interim finance committee members. Nevada is out in front of this and committing a large portion to its fiscal recovery funds for affordable housing, but it does make it challenging. Steve and Michael, I'm sure this also depends on the amount of applications you get, but is there a per project or per developer cap?
We did not establish one. again, I think it will be done with the submission of the pre-application to kind of look at the total development costs, the population served, all of those questions, and the sustainability and layering of funds, like I mentioned. So no, there is not a specific hard and fast cap. I will say that there are different requirements, reporting requirements, that are required in the final rule. If you get over $1 million or $10 million, you have to do X or Y or Z. So, and that should be another thing. If you receive funding, this doesn't come, just here's a check and you're on your way. There's going to be reporting and compliance and a whole litany of things that you as a developer, and I'm sure a lot of our tax credit developers and folks that operate in this space know, can be a little bit challenging sometimes. And while, I should comment on this, while those things are spec'd out in a LIHTC project, so if you receive federal tax credits or home funds or some federal source, this does not have those overlays like specific to what those funds require. However, the division is going to make certain that some semblance of that is going to occur. So we will be using sort of the blueprint that we have for tax credit projects and projects that get grant funds through the division for compliance and things and reporting and things of that ilk that are probably going to be a little more prescriptive than what's in the fiscal recovery funds.
Excellent. And I think this next question, you alluded to it with the X, Y, or Z triggers. Someone asked about grant or loan and if prevailing wage is triggered.
Yeah, we're working through all of that stuff. So as Christine mentioned, we're one of the first states that just dove into the deep end of the pool. And so it presents some challenges when you're the first one, or one of the first ones out of the gate to try to figure this stuff out. And we've been working with a lot of other state agencies, national organizations in trying to discern those answers.
Great. I have a couple, one pretty technical question from one of our top developers in the state. We understand that federal purchase procurement to CFR Part 200 applies. We understand that ARPA funds do not have the same requirements of the home program. Can you explain the differences, specifically the use of force account? And I don't know if that's one that you'll need more information on, and I can follow up.
Yeah, I unless Michael, I know you unmuted your microphone, unless you've got a great answer for that.
I do have an answer from our council that basically said that's going to be a developer question. They need to confer with their council to figure out if what they're doing is compliance with 2 CFR. The division won't be weighing in on that. The requirement is simply going to be that your process is in compliance with all the federal regulations.
Great, and thank you, Michael. And I'm going to start on our Q&A after this last question again from one of our top developers. For permanent supportive housing projects, does the division anticipate Medicaid funds being available for tenancy services? Of course, we need that coordination of service dollars, and hopefully we can get that going as we roll out these ARPA projects for supportive housing.
Yeah, so we've already had discussions with the Department of Health and Human Services. I can't answer specifically to the Medicaid portion of it, but when we're going to look at a supportive housing development or a development that is in part supportive housing, that's one of the things that we're really going to be concerned with is the sustainability of that project and how it will be funded going forward. We know that these are one-shot monies basically to build. We need to make sure that what we build will be sustainable, especially for those populations going forward. So it won't be just limited to DHHS on the state side. We'll be talking to local jurisdictions and health entities and whatnot, nonprofits, whatever it may be that services those populations.
Awesome, thank you. So here's a good one. Let's pivot from our technical developer questions a little. Can we use this money to develop manufactured housing communities?
So that is a potential use of the funds. I do want to caveat, and this is true of any of the developments, the ultimate recipient of the fundings have to be eligible. So that means that, and basically in the final rule, it talks about being under 60%. Well, it's actually 65% AMI, but we're going to use 60% sort of as our benchmark, because that ties in with the tax credits, or under 300% of the federal poverty level. So we're going to, you know, if any development is going to be done, and it has to service that population or a percentage of that population, i.e., if you're going to develop a project that might be 50 million and got to do my math here, 20% of it is going to service lower income or eligible occupants, then that money has to tie in just to that 20%. The other 80% is going to have to come from some other source that has nothing to do with affordable housing.
Excellent, thank you. Who's the applicant sponsor, i.e. the nonprofit? I'm guessing that's main member, project entity, new LLC developer.
It could be all of the above.
Excellent, I like those easy questions.
Yeah, and again, from the pre-application process, those don't need to necessarily be identified in the pre-application process. That any of that sort of thing will come through the application process. So the secondary process, you know.
Great, and who's deciding what projects will be funded?
So great question, and we're working on that too.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, I like this one. What do you think is the soonest? Because of course the pre-application, everybody apply. Amanda's going to drop the link again into the fillable form that's a little easier than the website for you. And if you missed that, just email us. But when do you think the soonest funding awards will be, or the soonest awards will be made?
That's a tough question. I can speak to it in broad terms. Effectively, we will close the pre-application portal on the 15th. It's going to take us probably the better part of a week or two, I'm going to say. So make that to Memorial Day. And I'm sorry, I'm just kind of walking through this in my head to kind of determine which projects are eligible and scoring the projects and how that's going to work. So we would probably be circling back to those who have qualified and are eligible, probably first part of June. They're obviously going to need some time to get through a full application process. So I would say awards, probably July would be about the earliest, kind of right off the top of my head. And you know, we need to, you know, just because the state is willing to award, that might not mean if they're trying to get funding from a local jurisdiction, that timeline works there also. So we're going to have to evaluate that process as we go through.
Great. And kind of time for one more question, but I do want to leave enough time so that we can understand once these units are built, how people can find them, how our Nevadan households, those we actually are serving here, can actually locate these units. This question you may not have an answer to yet, Steve. I know it was still open-ended a few weeks ago. Under the land acquisition bucket, is there a timeline in which affordable housing must be built on the property?
You know, again, per the final rule, we have not seen anything to that extent. But that would probably be something that we would, you know, again, I would suggest doing the pre-application process. And then we probably have a discussion to find out, because, and again, I'm just talking out loud, in reviewing those for land in the future development, we're probably going to evaluate things like Is it close to transit? Is it close to health facilities? Is it going to be developable a little more rapidly? So I would think that something that's going to come to fruition is probably going to score higher than you just say, well, we're just going to bank this into perpetuity. But again, that's all to be determined.
Awesome. Well, I'm pretty sure if we were in person, everybody would be giving you a round of applause. I just want to let everybody here know that the Nevada Housing Division team has been incredible, because remember, they do also have their day jobs. And they've been responsive. I know Nevada Housing Coalition developers and members and me have been pushing them with questions, with, hey, I saw this being done over here. Can we do it in Nevada? And then we go and show them the examples. They've been open, available. I really hope that Nevada understands, and I know the governor said earlier, Steve, but you, Michael, and the whole team at the Nevada Housing Division have really been fantastic in this time. And I just want to thank you so much.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
So, and there's a couple other questions that I will try to get to as well, especially if everyone wants to stay on after Betsy goes. I'm happy if the division's okay, maybe to stay a few minutes after 12:45.
I have a hard 1 o'clock out.
Okay, so 12:55 we'll stop. But Betsy will only take a couple minutes. I also want to address this too. How will Nevada guarantee the longevity of this program after ARPA funds run out? Because that's actually not a question for the division. It's actually a question for all of us, because this is one-time funding. And if we really like the outcomes of this work of Home Means Nevada initiative, it's going to be on us Nevadans, on the coalition, on all of us across the state to figure out how this continues on. And I am hopeful and positive about how that looks. But with that, thousands of units are going to be either built or preserved with this. Homes, let's speak specifically to rental units. I want to turn it over to Betsy Fadali, because the Nevada Housing Division is actually a lead in the country, as Betsy and I were discussing this week. Massachusetts just barely figured it out. And the Nevada Housing Division has had in place a database that really serves our Nevadans that are out there searching for affordable units. So go ahead, Betsy.
Well, thanks for giving a little spotlight here to nvhousingsearch.org. We'll be listing those new units in nvhousingsearch.org, as we do with all of the tax credit properties and all of the properties across the state that have any federal or state kind of funding. We also have private market options listed in there. We're in our 8th year. We have over 48,000 units represented in the listings. This past year, we've had almost 100,000 searches. The website has a fair housing mission. We're trying to make all of these listings conveniently available in one spot, accessible to all Nevadans. And to further that end, we have associated with this a bilingual call center. You can get those listings through many modes, online, through the call center, fax, email, letter. The site works with screen readers. If you haven't seen it, go out and take a look at it. It's really a nice website, all kinds of detail on each listing with contact information, maps, pictures, accessibility features. And finally, this would not be working like this without the help and collaboration of people from all across the state. And I noticed that many of those people are signed in to this meeting. So thank you to all of you who have helped so much with this website. And finally, if you have any questions, suggestions, anything that you are thinking about nvhousingsearch.org, please let me know. And my email is efadali@housing.nv.gov.
Great. Thank you so much, Betsy. I sure appreciate that. And nvhousingsearch.org, there was actually just an article in Shelterforce this week talking about Massachusetts barely getting something like this started, and we've had ours for 8 years. So please, everybody, Betsy works hard on nvhousingsearch.org, and we were discussing how it actually plays a role in the fair housing world as well. If anyone wants to dig in with Betsy on that, she and I love to have those kinds of conversations. Thanks for your hard work, Betsy. Just a couple more questions, Steve and Michael. I will keep us in 4 minutes. We will be done. This is an application question that also had another question earlier. Earlier, I saw in the chat there was a question: is there an allocation for rent or mortgage assistance / homeless prevention? For example, there's an other sections under eligible uses. Is an eligible use a rental assistance program?
Yeah, I think I can probably answer that best. It is an eligible use of ARPA funds. However, that's really not what this initiative is designed to do. This is designed to actually build units, or preserve units, or basically the creation of more housing. So at this point, the Home Means Nevada initiative specifically is for building the units to support those folks, but not necessarily to provide direct support like there is with emergency rental assistance and things of that ilk.
Excellent, thank you. And then I see that Michael answered another question regarding land, which I know is still in process, but around the division's intent to have developers bring forth specific land to purchase. And in Michael's response, it was just currently that the idea would be working through the local jurisdictions on the purchases.
Yeah, and I think Christine, even on the pre-application that's listed under that segment, that's for jurisdictional applications only.
Okay, excellent. Great, well, so much information. Nevada Housing Division, your team is awesome, thank you. Thank you, Bill, also for kicking us off, my board chair. Thank you, Amanda, my teammate, and thanks to all of you. Amanda, and I'll put my email in the chat if anyone wants to reach out to me directly. And of course, if you missed the link for the fillable PDF form, please just reach out to us and we are happy to send it. But I just want to thank the division for all the time and energy you've put in. Developers, we are currently engaging in those legal conversations around Treasury's final rule so that we can maximize the use of the ARPA funds. We have a meeting, I think it is tomorrow. So, and yes, this has all been recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel. All registrants will get a follow-up email this afternoon. Usually Amanda does an amazing job with the turnaround, probably this afternoon, with a link to the recording. So thank you.